Welcome to our show, The Other Side. We've got a lot of stuff going on tonight. We found out there was a number from the state, and I'd like to have Josh Cote introduce that since he's got more information on that than I do. So, Josh, do you want to take it?
Sure. So we did get a number from the state today. It was 23,451, which is about 120,000 more than the 23,300 that was approved at the regional town meeting. It's not great. It's more than we would have got if we voted on it at the last meeting at the 23,300, but it's not great. We're going to have to cut $700,000 out of our budget. But you know, it's better than what it was. It was worth the fight. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, my thought is, Josh, we don't really know yet what the state's recommendations are going to be as far as the budget is concerned. Now, they may make some adjustments, correct? As far as where the money's going.
Well, I'm not sure about that. I don't know what the state can do. They've set the number. It's going to come back to us on the 10th to decide how to cut $700,000. I'm not sure what the options are, but this just came out today, so I'm not sure.
Well, they're going to have to come up with some type of a list of recommendations, I would guess. They've probably combed through the books and seen our budget already that you guys have put together. This isn't a magical number they just picked out of the air. Right? We have somebody in there in the office all the time looking at expenditures, correct?
We have an overseer that is working with the state, so they know what's going on, and you bring up a good point. We had a chance to talk to the state, and this is another thing that I wanted to talk about tonight. Last week, we were supposed to meet with the state, and the entire committee was encouraged to go, and right beforehand, we were told not to go, and that 2 members were going to go and talk to the state, basically petition them with our situation. It turns out that John Howard and Vinnie Cloutier went, and I respect that decision. What I have a problem with is that a 3rd member was brought in, and it wasn't opened up to the rest of the committee, and the 3rd member was Kevin Hayes. I didn't get a chance to go in there. I feel like I was cut out. Mary didn't get a chance. I know she feels like she was cut out, and I don't think the state got to hear enough of our side of it, the side that voted no on the 23-3 budget. So, we ended up here. We ended up with only $120,000 more. Now, you're right. They could come in and they could make decisions that we can't make to change things. I'm not sure how that works, but I feel like we got cheated. It's a small victory that we got $120,000 more, but it's kind of hollow in the sense that we should have gotten more. We should have had a chance to get in front of the state, the people from the state, and explain to them, have the whole committee explain to them, we have a big problem here. We've cut over, $2 million, almost $2.5 million out of the original budget, and this is what we're left with. There's not anything left to cut. Now we're faced with cutting $700,000 out of it, and I think that's going to break the district's back. We may end up in the same situation that we were in last year. We may end up in a deficit and having to borrow again because we just can't do this. But that's where they've left us, and that's where the lack of support in the committee has left us. So we're here at the 23-4. Hopefully the state can do something to help us out or a little bit, but this is where we're at.
Now, the budget you're talking about, Josh, was the original budget that Rich Scortino, the interim business manager, had set at that time, correct?
That was his proposed budget at the time.
Right. That's what I want. I want to be clear on that. All right.
26.4, and then they peeled that back to 24.1.
That's correct. We peeled it back to 24-1, and that's what we voted on. That's what we approved and sent it to the
Towns.
Sent it to the towns.
Right.
The towns kicked back 23-3, and now with the state's decision, we've ended up at 23-4-5. But that's a huge reduction, and when you're reducing only a small portion of your budget because you can't reduce the parts that are involved bargaining, there's only so much you can take out of that.
Well, from my point of view, and I understand Josh's frustration, but my point of view is the state just doesn't arbitrarily come up with this number. They saw the number before. There's somebody from the state working in the blue building watching expenditures. We had certain school committee members advocating for 24.1 million, and we had other school committee members in the towns looking at 23.3.
Right.
So what this is telling me is the 23,451. There's something else is coming down the road.
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt about that. I mean, from the very beginning, and we've had this conversation at length. I've felt from the beginning that if the state came in here, and I mean, we've heard all the stories. We've heard Dr. Hicks get up there. We've heard Mr. Cloutier get up there and say, you don't want the state coming in here. And we've heard Kevin Hayes get up there and tell you the state doesn't want to come in, which I find ironic considering when the last time the state came in was when the state troopers came in and took over our police force that was in a shambles, and we've ended up with a much better police force ever since. So
Right.
that's the irony I find there. But above and beyond that, I never felt like the state was going to come in and devastate the town services. If they devastate town services, how is that going to help the town in their ability to build the school system back up again and provide a quality education for kids? It would be counterproductive because, like we said on the last show, the state's only done this 5 times, and they did it recently in Quabbin. And as you and Josh and I talked about, Quabbin might be the blueprint we need to look at for this, but who knows? I mean, this just came out. We just found out about this today.
Well, that's, that the number is what it is. I mean, they've said it.
Oh, yeah.
What's ironic is when they originally set the budget, they said, it was at 26.7 million. Josh, is that what it was when the state first came in?
20, yeah, somewhere around there.
26.7, but Dr. Malvey and everybody agreed to operate at a 24.7,
Right.
1/12 budget.
Right.
So we're looking at 23,451, which is $1 million and change less than the 24/7. The 24/7. You're talking about $1.3 million. So it's $700,000 at Josh.
Well, the question becomes, where do you make that up? Now,
I don't know.
my thinking is, and from what I've heard from Quabbin, was that the teachers were taken over by the state. The state came in and they raised.
You say teachers. I think you got to be specific, and it's the teachers union.
Teachers union
Right.
ended up. They asked the teachers union to contribute more to health care. Now, the thing about the state coming in, and I've thought this was a good idea from the beginning, was that the fact that this district hasn't been able to make any movement on the union. The union is consistently and steadfastly refused to make any kind of concessions, any kind of moves. And like I said the last show, if the senior teachers who've retired had contributed more than 10% to their health care, if the teachers in our district had gone to like 40 or 45%, which other teachers in other districts do, we could have saved almost $800,000, and we wouldn't be having this conversation. And the fact that the union had absolutely no problem with watching our employees in the town lose their jobs, lose their health benefits. I mean, it was an untenable situation. I mean, and I think the state I think the state's looking at all of this. Now, I'm not saying the state's going to come in and they're going to do X, Y, Z. I don't know. None of us know for sure. But the one thing they did at Quabbin was they looked at the SPED program. They made reductions in the SPED program. They asked the unions to contribute more. And we can ask the unions to contribute more, but we can't get any leeway on that. But the state can. The state can adjust that number.
Well, there's people in Boston that have a bunch of letters after their name, PhD and all that other stuff. They're the ones that know the system inside and out. We're just a couple of guys from Spencer that
with opinions, yeah.
Yeah, with opinions. So we don't really know what it is
Nope.
in the back of their mind until they come back with their recommendations. This is what we think you should do, or it could be this is what you're gonna do.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this would lead me to believe, because I think a part of this is the fact that Adam put together what I guess was a phenomenal presentation.
21
for the state.
pages. 21 pages.
Adam and Gary Woodbury have been banging heads and trying to figure this thing out, and Adam's put a lot of work into this. And I think if this, and this is just conjecture on my part, if the state had really thought that the town was not doing their due diligence in terms of, we're not hiding any cash. There's no slush fund here. There's no, we're not telling you, oh, we got money hid over here. They laid the bones bare, and they said, look, this is where we're at. There is nothing here that there's no line items where we're hiding any money, or we're overexpanding on something, or we're lying about something. They laid everything open, and I think the state took that into consideration and realized, look, this is no BS here. This is the real deal.
Well, and I think I said it months ago when I was still on the school committee. I made the recommendation to let the state come in. I said, let them come
absolutely. I
in.
remember
We didn't
that.
have a business manager. Everything was we didn't have a superintendent. Things were in turmoil. I said, let them come in. But there was people that got up and voted, oh, you just put us into receivership and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, we put ourselves into a management position. I don't think this is a death number. I really don't. I think there are other things coming down the pipeline. I think there's going to be other recommendations, and I have a feeling, like I said, the people get paid big money to go over these numbers. And I'm sure they scoured the budget looking at what it is that we're spending and where. I mean, you could go right on the DESE website and see where our expenditures go per pupil.
Oh, and they're ridiculous, because they're like, I think $265 per pupil in pension and healthcare costs per student over the state average. And Josh, you want to step in here?
Well, I just wanted to say that I hope you're right, Paul. I hope that they do have a plan, and that they do come in here and give us some options. At this point, we're left with cutting that $700,000 out, and I know you both were at that meeting where they presented the $700,000, and I kind of went down the list. We're going to have to come up with better options than what we saw at that meeting last month, because that was $700,000 in reductions based on hope and foolishness. The chances of that actually turning out to $700,000 by the end of the fiscal year, I think, was just not going to happen. Maybe 350,000, but I think we were going to run into problems there. I hope the state has, some ideas. I'm not going to talk about anything to do with the union or anything, but I agree with you. I really hope they do. They have something they can come in with, because I don't see where we can cut more money out. And, I felt bad for the town. I know I made some comments, and some people were very angry at the comments that I made, but I really did believe that, we can't base education on the town needs. I don't want to see something happen to the town. I don't want to see them close the transfer station or turn off the lights or whatever they were talking about. But I also know that we can't warehouse kids. So hopefully the state can, come in between the two parties and come up with something,
Well, and that's a good point. It is a good point, and that's one of the things I'm sure that there's a balance point here. I'm telling you, there's much of an advocate as Josh and John and Mary were for not voting for that, which I'm glad they didn't, because really what it did is it brought the state in to kind of really look things over and say, okay, you guys are close. We're gonna put a little bit more in here, So for them to look at it and say, we're going to give you an additional $120,000 or so, tells me that there's something else up there. So they've got a trump card or something up their sleeve that's going to come back.
I don't think there's any doubt.
It's simple math, folks. We have X amount of kids. Each one of those classes that those kids are, we try to keep at 25 or 26. So really what you do is you divide up the grades and you plug a teacher in for each one. Okay, so that's where we start. So if we have a classroom that's a little bit bigger, we put an aide in there. Right? Mm-hmm. So you can plug the numbers in pretty quick as far as what you're going to need for faculty. It's all the other stuff that skews the numbers and that you have to include. I mean, your transportation costs and your fuel oil and all that, all these other hard numbers that, I mean, what your salaries are going to be year after year after year.
That's not going to change.
You know what I mean?
significantly.
Some of the big skewed numbers, you guess on how much fuel oil you're going to use. You guess on what your electricity. I shouldn't say guess, but you budget for it. And Josh, you bring up a good point because I think one of the things that they did is we have a $100,000 liability line item in the budget, and that it goes towards health insurance. And
Right.
what that $100,000 is to pay for co-pays and deductibles and things of that nature that potentially the employees of the school district could go through with their health care. Well, one of the things that they did was they chopped $30,000 off of it. So that's a budget reduction. It's like, I understand that 30,000 is 30,000. Now we're down to 70,000. The chances of gobbling up that 70,000, who knows? But if it's $70,001, the school district is responsible for the $1. And I'm not saying it's going to. That's just it's kind of a.
It's a numbers game.
It's a numbers game. Is it a solid budget cut? I don't know. I guess it only takes one. It's only going to take one, perfect storm, and I don't even think it has to be a perfect storm to gobble up that $70,000.
No, it wouldn't take that much.
So I don't know. I'd like to see. I'd like to see what the state comes back with. I'm telling you, there's got to be some type of plan that they have where a trump card, something up their sleeve. It's just they don't spin the wheel and pick that number.
Well, the other side of that too is nobody can clean sometimes you just can't clean your own house. I mean, for a variety of reasons. You become entrenched in doing things the same way. You're doing things the same way every time. Well, why would we do this any different? We've always done it this way.
Right.
We have a special ed program that's over $6 million. I mean, it's double what it costs to run Prouty. I mean, 2.5 times what it costs to run Prouty. I'm not saying that that's where they're going to find money, but traditionally in some of these programs, when I've looked at some of the stuff from when states have come in and taken over schools, that's one of the places that they tend to look. Dr. Hicks built, a heck of a program here. Now, whether or not that program is a little bit bloated, I don't know. We certainly know we could save money on healthcare. There's absolutely no doubt, and we're upside down on healthcare. For retirees to be paying 10% is a ridiculous situation. It absolutely is.
Well, it's kind of tough to pay 10% when you get health insurance costs that go up double digits every year.
Well, it's like I said, it's not only that, but it's the fact that, at some point, and I've said this for a while now, that the state needed to come in because we obviously can't do this. And sometimes because you're close to the situation and God knows you're afraid of offending people because we're an entrenched system and everybody knows everybody and the administrators know everybody. And, it's one of those situations where, I mean, look at some of the selectmen. Some of the selectmen are so afraid of mentioning the union word and making somebody angry. I mean, Donnie Berthium in an article in the paper went after Josh Cote and the TNG because he didn't like the way he voted.
Right.
It's like, you know what? Instead of all this infighting, how about we try to get together, try to put our heads down and get through this, because we will get through this. And we'll come out a stronger district, at the end of this day. But there's still a lot of questions that have to be asked. There's still a lot of, and I mean, Mark James said it in January. We need to share the pain. Well, we're going to find out if Mark is willing to share that pain, because he may not have the option. And I think that needs to happen. And people don't want to talk about that. And especially the selectmen don't want to talk about that because they're afraid of offending somebody or whatever. Bottom line, I really don't care. It's like we need to have teachers contribute more to health care. We need to get this district straightened out. And we need to work something out where we're thinking about where the kids are the focus. Bring in AP courses. Bring in help for these kids that need the help. I mean, people keep talking about, well, we have a lot of transient students. We have kids coming in and out of the district constantly. This Jacob Hyatt Magnet School in Worcester is doing phenomenal, and they're doing it with minority children. And these kids come from broken homes and everything else. The bottom line is, and this goes a lot to, and we're going to touch on this, is the district profile for Spencer and East Brookfield. We're underperforming. We've been underperforming for 4 years. Since 2010 to 2013, when you look at the district profile, we're flat out underperforming. Somebody's not getting the job done. And it's the teachers in this district are not getting it done.
I think it's funny that it's 4 years because it's 4 years of lack of leadership. You had a lame.
That's part of it.
Well, you had a
That's
lame duck
absolutely.
superintendent that knew he wasn't coming back. Correct.
Oh, absolutely.
And then
Yep.
we had, the other guy come in that, painted the streets, painted all the schools gold, and then, left us in turmoil because, again, you can't prosecute stupidness, if that's even a word, you got nobody leading the ship, man.
But
Nobody.
at the end of the day, it's like I think it goes back to that comment you and I argued about it last week, and you said, if I'm going to a doctor, I want the best doctor. I honestly don't feel like we have the best doctors. I feel like we have some of the best doctors, but I have a feeling, and based on, you can talk about A, B, C, and D, and we need to do this and we need to do that. The scores and the district profile says it all for me. It's like, and I'm not saying that's the end all, but I'm saying if you're going to have a signifier, something that's going to say, am I doing the job? Here's where I'm setting the level. And one time, remember when, no, let me go back. Let me finish. Remember when I said about Dr. Hicks, and I said, I said to Dr. Hicks, well, we got a level 3 school. And he goes, well, there's a lot of districts with level 3 schools. And you had the same conversation. And he said the same thing to you. And I said, oh, so great. So if we set the bar low enough, then we'll all be the same. Well, you know what? I'm sorry. I don't want the bar to be low enough. I want the bar to be set high. I want the kids in this district to be challenged. I want the teachers to be challenged. And regardless of leadership, you are the ones in the trenches to get this done. And it's time to start getting it done.
On that same note, in a parallel conversation, you talk about teachers not performing. Let's put it that way. Mm-hmm. Is it the teachers or is it the lack of tools that?
Oh, there's no question.
Okay, so
there's
if
no
we
money
go
for that. There's no money for professional development. When I talked to Matt Baldock, I told you when I was on 2010, and I said to Matt, what's the one thing we could do for the teachers that would help them do their job? And he said, a full day of professional development. So then we go back and we talk about professional development. There's no money. Because it's like maintenance, like school books, like everything else in our district. By the time you get done with all this other stuff, there's no money left for anything else. So you got to kind of wonder, we're dealing with a district that, by their own admission, will not take a pay freeze, will not contribute more to healthcare to save teachers' jobs, yet they want the professional development, and I understand that, and I fought for that when I was on the school committee. But at the end of the day, if you're not going to work and show some movement to try to get this done, so that we can bring in professional development, I'm talking like 3 full days of this to get on track. Instead, we got Karen Zaleski going around saying, we're aligning the curriculum. We're setting up a committee. Well, 4 years ago, we set up a committee. We're still waiting for that committee to be set up, and we got a curriculum director who's never taught in a classroom. And in fact, you sent Dr. Melvi an email.
I did.
And you asked him that very question.
Yeah, but apparently that's not a requirement because everything goes through him. He gets the final say one way or the other, what direction.
And I get that, but it's like, you know what? Again, I still feel right now with Dr. Malvi, we have a total, complete lack of leadership. I feel like this override, when it came up the first time, should have been sold to the voters. If it was important enough for the school district, and it certainly was, Paul, it should have been sold to the voters. They should have been on cable access TV. He should have had Karen Zaleski on there. He should have had himself on there. He should have been explaining to voters, this is why we need the money. That never happened. Everybody just assumed that, well, the money's just going to come in. Well, after 4 years of listening to teachers say, no, we're not going to do this. I think this district has had enough, and it's time to try to bring that ship back around, and that's what I think the state's going to do.
Well, that could very well be. I mean, I don't have a bunch of letters after my name.
I don't think that's that important, to be honest.
You know what I mean?
Not after the last couple I've seen. It's like, I don't think it really matters.
So I'm not the one that can dive into this and make a decision on whether or not this number is going to work based upon what they see in our budget, or they're going to come and say, well, you need to cut $700,000 because that's all the money we're going to give you.
I don't think that's going to happen.
Neither do I.
I really don't. I don't see them. Their whole thing with coming in is they want to come in and they want to do this one time. Let's do this. Let's do this right. Because like I said, this has only happened 5 times before. We're the 6th district since 1993 that's ever been taken over. and you haven't ever heard of a repeat district. So I think these guys, and I think you're right in what you're saying, is I think these guys know enough about what they're doing that they're going to do this and they're going to do it right, and they're going to say, okay, we've given you the tools now, get this done.
And the other thing I think everybody has to think about is this wasn't a number. This isn't caused just by this year.
Oh, absolutely
or last year.
Not. No.
This
no.
is, I'm going to guess, Josh, and you might want to pipe in on this, but this is like 20 years of abuse. This is 20 years of stripping the district, and it's finally coming back to it's finally coming back to roost. And it's like, oh my gosh, well, how do we deal with this now? And I don't. What do you figure, Josh? About 20 years, maybe more, less?
I think it's a long time. It's decades in the making, and I think the blame, what you guys have just talked about here, the blame can go to everybody. It can go to the school committees. It can go to the administration. It can go to the towns. The district is underfunded. The spending is way out of whack. You don't have money for different line items that you're talking about. You don't have money for professional development. You don't have money for books. You don't have money for technology. You don't have money for software updates. What little money we do have is used as a stopgap to fix something or to settle this contract or whatever it's used for, and it's never quite enough. So you have a lot of fault to go around here. It took years and years and years to get here. This was the breaking point, and I think one of the big things that people are forgetting is it's almost December, and we're still on this budget. We haven't touched next year's budget. We haven't gone into negotiations. We're not there. The contract is not settled. It's just, there's so much to do, and I'll tell you right now, this budget this year can still be screwed up, and it can still land us in a lot of trouble. And by not having even looked at next year's budget, next year's going to be a disaster too if we don't get this together. You said the state comes through and they take over once and they don't seem to do it again. Well, if we don't get out of our own way, it's going to happen again because we're not going to get this settled. We need to start working on FY15. We need to put this budget to bed, be done with it, and walk away and get going on next year's budget, because this is not the budget that we have as it stands now. Straight from Dr. Malvey, it is not educationally sound and it is not fiscally sustainable. I don't know which one scares you more, but educationally sound scares me, but fiscally sustainable tells me we're not gonna be able to settle next year's budget as everything stands right now. So it's very scary right now and going into the future.
I don't know where we go. It's we got the number. We have to live with it. We can't go back and ask for more. So I'm not sure where that leaves us. Like I said, I have faith that the state's going to come back and say, here are our recommendations. This is what we think you need to do to get your ship back going in the right direction.
You got to start somewhere, and that's it's as good a number as any number out there. And I believe that they came up with that number because I believe they're going to do something else. I believe they're going to look within the system.
maybe if the constituents stand up and say enough is enough, we're sick of because they're getting bashed, just like the school committee gets bashed. The teachers in the teachers union are getting bashed. I think it's unfair.
I don't think so.
I think it's unfair for some of them.
I don't think it's unfair at
well,
all.
I do. I think it's unfair for some of them to get bashed because I have 2 kids in the district. I see what they deal with. I see what they have to do. We've got first grade math books that we haven't even bought. So what do the teachers do? These are supposed to be disposable math books. Okay, so each kid gets assigned a math book. Throwaways, I think they call them, or disposable. So what happens at the beginning of they can pull out the pages. They follow the curriculum throughout the year based upon the books. I'm sure the teachers can pick and choose what pages, but the problem is we don't have any for the first grade. None. It was never budgeted.
Can you hold those up, Paul?
Can you see that? So that's one of the math books. It's a disposable book. The kids get to assign these at the beginning of the year, and as the school year goes on, they just pull the pages and this is what they bring home, or this is what they work on in school, or bring home for homework. Well, the first graders at Lake Street don't have any of these. So what the teachers had to do is they had to get together and make copies of the pages.
That's what you were explaining on the last show. That's why we're bringing it up again, because we didn't get, Paul didn't get a chance to really go into this in any kind of depth.
They make copies of the pages, and then they take the pages and put them in a notebook, a 3-ring binder. Mm. And then when it comes time to talk about or to teach that one section, all the first grade teachers they're all in line with each other. They take that page and they make X amount of copies based upon how many kids they have in the classroom. So that they are teaching curriculum as a first grade group just in Lake Street, if you can kind of follow that,
right.
You know. But this is the kind of stuff that we end up with. We don't have books. It wasn't even budgeted for. It was told to take it out of the budget. We can't.
Think about that. How do you say you don't have books? I mean, these are the building block years. These are the years that are the most important. I think is pre-K through basically through 6. Is where you teach kids, you give kids the lessons they need, you give them the building blocks. I look at that. When you told me about that, I was just like, seriously?
They can't teach science in second grade. The second grade classes cannot have science together at the same time, every day. There aren't enough books to go around. So what happens is one class has it one day, another class has it another day, or another time period.
They have to rotate it because they can't be doing it at the same time.
We don't have enough books. Okay, for whatever reason, the administrations, the past administrations, and the other school committees just did not allow for technology growth. They did not invest back into the system itself. Okay, when you own a company, you need to invest back into that company for growth.
Of course you do.
So you don't take all the money and spend it frivolously. You take, okay, listen, I want to grow to this in 1 year. You put aside X amount of dollars every month.
You want to see advancement.
So that maybe you go from just yourself to 1 employee after 1 year, and then 2 employees. But you're investing back into the business. You're buying a truck. You're buying, But for whatever reason, in this district, we have a tough time investing back into the things that we need to teach our kids. I put this one up. This is a social studies book. This is a social studies book. Are you kidding me? I mean, the copyright is, this is first unit 1. The copyright is, I think it's, 1998, I think, or 2004. There's so many of them. And I kind of made a joke about it, but I mean, the teacher's got a mullet. I mean, come on, look at, and I'm not making fun of her. I'm sure she's an actor, not a teacher, but when was the last time you saw that hairstyle?
In the 80s?
You know what I mean? So I can't take it anymore. This is grade 3, volume 2. And it looks like it's been through.
And the books are not in the greatest of shape to begin with.
It's like they've been thrown in a washing machine and dryer. And that's why I said, listen, I think part of our problem as far as the education is concerned is lack of investment back into the district. I think what happened is you had school committees that they wanted to get into a meeting and get out as fast as they could. Give. Yep, not a problem. Pep, off we go. Without really looking into the future. That's why we had 5 schools.
Well, that's not conjecture, because it's like we know based on the teacher's contract we currently have, this didn't happen overnight.
No.
I mean, I've been told that the school's attorney, when he first saw this contract, was like, "Are you kidding?" It was like so ironclad and so teacher loaded, or if you want to call it union loaded. I mean, I guess that's the frustrating part of being on the school committee is you're supposed to advocate for the children and for the taxpayers, because the union is taking care of the teachers. Teachers pay $700 a year in union dues to be part of that and have that protection and have somebody looking out for them. And I think we've kind of gotten away from that give and take of what's the common ground here? What are we doing this for? We're doing this for the kids. And I think that's been lost in this whole conversation, and I think that's a shame. And I think the test scores and where we stand, we got 2 level 3 school districts. 2 level 3 schools in our district that's not a glowing endorsement. And I understand part of that is, is a lack of leadership, and it certainly has been. I mean, there's no question. But to not invest in the books and infrastructure, and I mean, we talked about this, we touched briefly on it last show with Dave Bayshant and the CVTE money.
Ugh,
They got $600,000 that these business owners got together. It's part of a consortium, basically got together, and they raised $600,000, and Dr. Hicks decided it would be better just putting it in a general fund. So anything that could have been books, computers, laptops, whatever, smart boards. I mean, smart boards they use in a lot of the elementary schools, and I guess they're phenomenal.
Yes.
And it's, how does that happen? Parents come in. Parents and teachers give their time. They have bake sales. They do fairs. They do all kinds of stuff to raise money. And all these schools have done this. And parents and teachers alike have given of their time to get this thing done so that we can. And so that's what it comes down to, is people putting their time and their effort in and raising money to do this. It's like, this isn't a sustainable system, Paul.
It is not a sustainable system. And get back to CVTE money. I was talking to Mr. Bayshant. This was last year, and I had him explain to me exactly what it is that transpires. And he said, and really what it is, like you said, it's a group of businesses that got together. At one point in time, they actually brought the businesses through the school so they could see what we didn't have for technology. And they meet every few months. They've raised money. I think at one point they had over $800,000. But that money was supposed to be dedicated for improving our technology throughout the district. We have computers in the high school that are 10 and 11 years old, maybe even older, I'm not sure, maybe a little younger. But the problem is it can't run specific software. We have businesses that are willing to do co-op with our kids. And the problem is the kids can't learn the stuff because we don't have the correct we don't have the big enough computers, I guess, software-wise that
Can't run the software.
Can't run the software.
It's like light years. Well, what they're running is light years ahead of what these kids have.
Right.
I mean, I was in the library tonight and I saw the old Wi-Fi setup, and it's like, it's a a hardware setup, and I'm like, I got a better deal than that at my house.
You know what? You look at the books and stuff like this, and I'm wondering, maybe make a recommendation. Should we start looking at iPads? Should we start looking at some type of tablet?
Shrewsbury did. I guess it's a pretty successful program.
You know, I don't know. I mean, you're always going to have some type of paperwork. You need the kids to learn to write. So you'll always have something like this. But because of the lack of the lack of money, do we look at, because if you get the iPads, you can download the books for free.
Yep.
So you make the original investment, and it doesn't have to be an iPad. We could go and talk to Google, or you could go Nexus, I think, which is I think that's a Galaxy. I'm not even sure. There's
I think it's a Galaxy. I think.
You know, there's so many of them, but maybe that's the direction we need to go in. And you get the iPad, you get the tablet, and you're assigned that tablet, and you take out insurance for it. So if you lose it, it's going to cost less than these. These are $40 or $50 per student.
Yeah, they're not cheap. I mean, the school books are certainly not cheap, and God knows it's like there's been no investment, and that's what got you involved in the school committee.
Irritating.
One of the kids came home with one of the school books,
Correct.
and you're like, "Are you serious? This is what a school book looks like for the
Correct.
school?" It's like, it's not sustainable. It really isn't. It's absolutely ridiculous.
So let's we talked about the $600,000 a little bit. There was one other mistake that was done by a former superintendent, and this is a couple of years ago during negotiations and employee numbers for bargaining, health insurance, and stuff like that. And the lack of information cost the district $300,000. It could have been, I think it was about $300,000.
It was close to that. Yeah, it was very close.
You know, and basically it was just like, oh, sorry, I gave the wrong numbers. But what he did at the time is he threw the former business manager under the bus and said, well, he gave me those numbers.
And, it's funny because Roger Pomeran was our business manager at the time, who, many people don't know this, because a lot of people said, he fired the business, Dr. Naiman fired the business manager. Roger didn't have a license.
Correct.
He didn't have the proper licensing to do this job, which, you know, when you start looking at that and you go, okay, well, now I understand why all the budget numbers got moved around and why things happened the way they had, because we always had people who weren't technically
Qualified.
not technically, they wasn't qualified. Not by the state. I mean, and when I found this out, when I said to Roger, because I didn't know this at the time, and I said to Roger, I said, how come we're losing this money? And Roger said, Dr. Hicks came in, asked me, just stopped by the office and said, and made a reference to what the past commitment was to the teachers for a number, and Roger said, oh, it was, and he just threw the number out. But he thought it was just an off-the-cuff number and not something that was going to be taken to the CBA and saying, this is the number. And we ended up losing a great deal of money over it. But as was sometimes the past practice, let's throw everybody else under the bus, and you know, and that's, I guess, the thing that's kind of irritating with this whole thing is that we've never had a leader who ever stood up and said, look, the buck stops here. This is where it stops.
Yep.
And I think that would go a long way in setting the mood and setting the tone for the district, without a doubt.
Well, I said that. That's it. We still have the old, you know, the Viking ship is in the water and everybody gets a paddle. It's the only.
Not all rowing in the same direction.
Well, it's the only way to explain it. I've never seen anything like it.
It is.
Everybody gets in the ship. Everybody gets a paddle, and you get some guy beating a drum up there, or blows a whistle, and you go, and it doesn't mean you got people going forward, backwards. Yeah, they get some people that just sitting there for the ride. Yeah, let me know when we get there, you know. And it's unfortunate. I don't know how it got like this. I really don't. I think it's a combination of a lot of things. I think the state getting involved. I think them deciding that Chapter 70 money needs to be cut, and we're going to put more of a burden. That's why we're here. At one point in time,
The
we were
state
getting
wants you to take more of the share.
Well, yeah. At one point in time, we were getting 80% of our budget money from the state.
Not anymore.
And now, and every year, for I don't even know how many years, it gets cut and cut and cut. And they're not going to be happy until it's down to a, Josh, what is it, down to like a 51, 49%? Is that what the actual number is that they're looking for?
I don't remember what the exact is, but you're close. It's something like that. And every year, until we hit the target, they're going to hit us with a penalty. So the local contribution is going to go up no matter what. And then they're going to add on a 1 or a 2% penalty on top of that until we hit our target, which is somewhere in the low 50s, I believe. And they don't care. They're just going to keep doing it till we're there. Because there are other districts that are well beyond, and they pay, they're at target, and they pay well beyond their minimum local contribution, and not, the 100,000 or 200,000 that we pay beyond it. We're talking huge percentages, and the state has they have no mercy, so they'll keep assessing that penalty to us.
Well, at some point, well, we've talked about this. We know where this is going, that they want to see towns sustain their own education system, bottom line. So the question is, as a town, knowing this, I talked to a state rep, and who happened to, actually, I served on the education board, and I said, explain Chapter 70 to me, and he goes, I really can't. And I said, why not? And he said, because it's so archaic, and there's so much minutia to it, and so many small bits and pieces to this puzzle. He said, I can't even begin to explain it. I said, so I can't go back and explain this to the people that voted me in for the school committee. And he goes, no. And he was honest. He was being that honest.
I think it's funny. I think it's funny that the person who's at the state level can't explain how the thing runs. So
we got a call. Heidi, you're live on the air. What can we do for you? Yep. Heidi? Okay. We lost the call. It's a ridiculous situation. There's another situation that I just don't understand. There's a lot of stuff going on with East Brookfield. We've seen East Brookfield from the beginning of this process. where East Brookfield was talking about, well, we can't afford to pay this. You know, when we were talking about the original override, and our seniors can't afford. And I understand that they're in the same boat. They're in the same boat we are.
It's a town of 3,000 people, which I understand.
With a higher tax rate than we have.
With a higher tax rate, but they have minimal as far as commercial property.
There's not,
and they don't even allow. They don't even allow. I think you can't have anything larger than a 2-family. I don't even think they allow 3 families or anything like that.
1 second, Josh is going to cut in. What's up, Josh?
Well, that caller, Heidi, had asked what's being done to make the school committee knowledgeable. And I'm not 100% sure where she's going with this. I don't know if she's asking where we're getting our information or where we're just becoming qualified to do our job. Paul, actually both of you guys have been on, so I'd like to hear what you have to say. I can tell you that our current situation is not in the owner's manual. I have the owner's manual. It was given to me when I got on the school committee.
We all got it.
And along with my 3-hour course, and superintendents that do what our last superintendent did is not in the owner's manual. They try to educate us as best they can, but I have no real answer for her. Other than that, we're getting our information from the superintendent and the business manager, which is the only place, and there's some amount of faith that you have to put in these people that you're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to tell you the truth, because you're not in the office paying the bills, signing the checks. So, I mean, that's about all I can come up with for that, but you guys have both been there, so what do you guys think?
Paul, you were there last.
Listen, he's not far off.
He's not far off at all.
You know, it doesn't come with. It wasn't anywhere near as, I don't want to say easy, but it was 10 times harder than I ever thought it was going to be. It doesn't come with any instruction manual. And for us to go through what we went through, and for Mary to be put in that position as chairman, and not to have any type of background on how to cope with this type of problem, was insane. I mean, we were talking on the phone all the time. You know, we were emailing or texting, or, you know, what's next? How do we do this? Or, you know, and I know people yelled at her, but it was, we weren't just sitting there. It was a hard thing to do. Okay, we were learning on the go. We were relying on our lawyer to kind of guide us through some things. And if it took a certain amount of time to get through something, it's because we took his recommendations on how to deal with this more than just, you know, doing it ourselves. And that's what this guy gets paid for. He's been around it forever. He's been around school.
And the other side of it is you're trying, and there's not a school committee in the last 5 years that has not tried not to get sued. When Peter Rock got sued twice, I got sued. Vinnie Cludier is right in the middle of a Department of Labor lawsuit that, what I understand, is going to cost us around $50,000. So it's a ridiculous situation because, and you know this better than anybody, you're trying to do your job. You're limited by what you can do, and
Correct.
More limited by what you can say, which I came to find out. You know, and it's like, common sense is not part of the curriculum. And when you get dumped into this job, somebody throws you into this job and they say, here you go. You take an MASC course that's a 2 or 3 hour course. They explain this is what an open meeting law is. This is what this is. But there's different parts to this, and there's different levels to it. And you can do something and make a mistake and not even know about it. And let me tell you something. Somebody's there to jump on you and explain it to you, and that's the union. And it's not always the union. Sometimes it's the folks in the audience. I mean, look at the meetings in January I went to when you were still on the committee, and it was a Roman bloodbath because everybody had a better idea than you did, and we heard about there's red flags everywhere, red flag. Well, you know, be that as it may, that doesn't mean you can necessarily do something about it, because as we've tried to explain on this show, the ability of a superintendent to move money around within a district is ridiculous. And everybody does it. I've seen two administrators did. Now, Dr. Melvi, I don't know, but I saw Dr. Naiman and I saw Dr. Hicks, and I had personal personal, upfront and personal with Dr. Hicks. And some of the stuff that I saw going on, I was just, and we talked about it on the show, you know? It's not as easy as it is. If it was, everybody'd be doing it. And let me tell you something, come May, the only two people I've heard that are going to run right now are Gary Suter and Jack Gagnon, two former selectmen. And now I got to kind of laugh because it's like, so, you know, here we go. We're going to get the band back together,
isn't this,
you know?
Wasn't this the group that was involved with being on a select board in 2000 and stuff through with the signed bylaw thing?
The signed bylaw, the water emergency, the police being taken over, Terenzini, lawsuits against the town, ethics violations, open meeting law violations, recall elections. I mean, do you want me to go on? And two of these members are currently on the board, and now we're going to bring back two more of them. It's like, God help us. But these are the people you're going to get, are people who were used to be in office. It's like...
Well, maybe after this, they'll, you know, perhaps they'll become a little smarter with how the elections go. I don't know.
I don't know what the answer is. It's like there's not a course out
you know
there
what?
or a support system in
let's
place.
Think about that. If we still have this show, you know, I think we bring them in for debates.
Oh,
I think we bring them in and ask them, listen, you want to answer some questions? We're going to fire some questions at you.
Speaking of coming in, Mr. Cote would like to jump in here.
Yes.
Go ahead, Josh.
All right, our friend Heidi has called back, and she would like to know, what tools and incentives does the school committee need to be more effective?
What tools
Anybody?
and incentives?
Takers?
Tools or incentives?
It's not, Heidi, there's no pay for this job. I don't know if I'm going to be able to explain this. There's no pay for the job. The incentive is you get on this committee because you want to do right by the kids. I got on it because I wanted to do right by the kids, and I wanted to do right by the voters, and I took it very seriously what I was doing. I don't know that nobody gets on this committee to do a half-assed job, bottom line. But you don't understand the pressures that you're under in terms of being able to say things, or how you coach or couch something or say something. You can end up in a lawsuit. I mean, you want some incentive? Take away some of the lawsuits. We've got more. How many thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars we spent on frivolous lawsuits last year? Incentives. There's no. You couldn't pay somebody to do that job. I would never do that job again. If it came with pay, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it.
Well, I think it's a good question, really.
It is a good question, but I don't know the
answer. Honestly,
no
Heidi, the biggest thing that could change would be how the budget's constructed. That's one of the biggest things. So you can follow the money.
Without a doubt.
And I don't know if Heidi saw the show where we had the cup and the balls and we kept moving it around. Well, and that's exactly what it is. That's how it works. Because you can look at expenditure reports and you can look at budgets on Monday, and Tuesday it'll be different, and then Friday it could be back to what it was, and then you go into the next week. So I think, you know.
And I appreciate the question. Don't get me wrong. I think it's a good question. It's just a hard question to answer because it's not something you can incentivize. You can't say, well, if you do this, we'll give you this. It's not like a carrot with a stick, you know.
No, the budget is built up of so many pieces because you have Chapter 70 money, and then you have grant money, and then you look at the CVTE thing. You have that money, which somehow got thrown into the general fund because it was considered almost considered like Chapter 70 money, even though it was dedicated towards technology.
And what do you do?
I don't know. It's like, it's just one of those things where, for me, the hardest thing was to start to learn the budget, you know, and then to go over the line items. I think you need more control over the line items. I don't want to say dumb it down, but what I would like to see is
dumb it down. Dumb it down. Make it so a third grader could understand this. I would love to see a budget that's it's a line item. Here's what you've got. Here's what you're paying. Here's what you have at the end. Here's your surplus. It's not brain surgery.
I mean, you're only meeting once a month. You know what I mean?
No, it's hard. It is. So. It's not the easiest job in the world.
That was a.
Thank you for the call, Heidi.
Yes,
Appreciate
Heidi,
that was a good question.
Listen, if you have any ideas, shoot us an email at theothersideforyou@gmail. We want to, you know, give us some thoughts. We'll surely take a look at them and pass them along if we need to, if we can.
Josh, with the holiday season coming up, I wanted to touch briefly on what St. Mary's is doing. Can you step in on that?
Yeah, they're going to be doing Thanksgiving dinner next Thursday at 12 p.m. They ask that you call the office and RSVP if you can. If you can't, just come down and have lunch with everybody. I was there last year helping, and it was a great time. This Saturday is going to be the food drop-off at the church between 8 and 9 a.m. Please stop by and drop off turkeys or anything that goes along with Thanksgiving dinner. They need all the help they can get trying to feed people. So between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. this Saturday is the food drop-off, and next Thursday at 12 noon is lunch, and that's basically what's going on up at St. Mary's.
How much time do we have?
The Rosary, sorry.
How much time do we have left, Josh?
A couple minutes.
I'd like to mention the 2013 Spencer Christmas Parade of Lights. It's going to be Saturday, December 14th at 7 p.m. The snow date is Sunday, December 15th, also at 7 p.m. The parade route will start at David Prouty High School and run down Main Street to Old Main Street, concluding at the Town of Spencer Highway Barn. Please join us in our 5th year for a night of beautiful twinkling lights, wonderful lighted floats, and lighted fire trucks to celebrate this festive Christmas season. All forms and information for anyone wishing to enter a lighted float, lighted fire truck, or any kind of lighted vehicle could be found at spencermass.gov. Click on Boards, then click Celebration Committee. Please contact Wendy Berthium with any inquiries at dberthium177@hotmail.com with a parade of lights in the subject line.
And how coincidental that you wear red and green today.
Well, you know, I'm trying to get into the festive spirit here. It's not always
You should have
easy.
worn feathers. It's Thanksgiving, not Christmas.
Feathers. I got feathers. It's on my boa at home. There's a lot of stuff going on. I guess the schools are also doing a food drive also, from what I understand.
Wire Village
and
just
some of
did
the other
theirs. Yep, they did theirs last week. And I think there's more coming up. I don't think they're done yet. I could be wrong.
I think they're probably going to run right up until they get out until this last day of school, I would imagine.
Wire Village ran theirs. My kids brought stuff in during the day, and then there was also parent-teacher conferences where, at night, where the kids were able to, the parents and kids were able to bring stuff in as well. So, and I know I guess it went over fantastic. I know there was a boatload of food.
The schools do a great job. So, folks, we're just about out of time. I just want to say thank you very much for joining us. Also, go to our Facebook site. The Other Side is on Facebook now, so you can go on that page. And thank you very much for joining us, and hope everybody has a great holiday.
Have a great Thanksgiving.
Thanks a lot, guys. We'll see you later.